presentation, and it would get the slides would get rendered from my PC while he does the speaking. As usual, we have a couple of polls, or 3 polls rather, and I would like you to answer them. So 57% people have voted. I would request you all of you to vote, and this helps us understand what is the profile of the audience. So roughly now 80% people have voted, and I will close it in next 5 seconds. 86% voted. Yeah, so I'm closing it. Thank you. So hope you are able to see the results. Essentially, what we are seeing is around 67% have attended 1 to 5. So none of and 8% have said they have attended this is their first webinar. So around 75% of the audience are in that category who, on average, listen to less than 1 webinar per month. And if you have any doubts about the webinar software, you could use the chat window, the question tab, and ask me the question about how to use this webinar software, assuming 75% of you are relatively new. We conduct a lot of webinars from TechXpla. Those webinars are not usually free to attend, except for there are some courses in digital media we conduct, which are typically 12-hour or 8 to 12 hours kind of courses. I would request you to just attempt this poll which you are seeing on your screen, and that would help us understand what is your preference, what kind of technology sessions you are interested in attending. So far, since the topic is about IoT, 100% people have said IoT. Yeah, and some of it has changed to big data. Only 47% people have voted. I would request you to quickly vote, so we go to the next poll, and then eventually to the person and to the speaker who will start his presentation. Yeah, so right now 63% people have voted, and the trend is IoT. Gopan, that also a pointer that you may have to, the audience loves IoT, and chances are more of them have attending this cloud summit because of the topic of IoT.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Okay. I'm closing this session now, and I'll just share the results. Only 70% people have voted, and it is overwhelmingly they like IoT. So maybe we need to do a big IoT event sometimes in September, October. Here we come to the last poll today, and I'm just hiding it. I hope you have recorded the result. So this is about your office. All of us use cloud functions. We use hosted email. We have CRM like Zoho or Salesforce and whatnot. And so far, only 13% people have voted, and that means more or less people are not aware. So now 25% people have said zero. So that means that cloud adoption is still not rise, but almost 50%, now 40% in 5 and above. So there is a lot of adoption happening on cloud, and let me tell you, some of us don't realize that they are using cloud, but many organizations now use cloud storage for your picture archives. They use some kind of a filer or vault, as it is known as. Most of the non-transaction software, that is the software which does billing and all that. So softwares like CRM, which the marketing uses, service desk, which the customer support uses, are moving to cloud. And of course, most of the infrastructure, it is said that almost wherever new projects come, it is the chances are the infrastructure would be 20% plus cases the infrastructure will be in cloud, and I'm only talking about ERP, uh, the new ERP cases. So I think I've waited for 80% people to vote, and I'm just closing it in another 2 3 seconds. Yeah, so I'm closing it, and yeah. So initially we had a situation where at one point of time 25% people were saying they are using 0% cloud resources at office, uh, which has come down to 7%. So very clearly, somewhere between say 2 to 5 is where the median number of people are there. With this, I will introduce you to speaker of today. Gopan Joshi has been working in the area of data center, cloud computing for last many years as a business manager, as a product manager. Today he will be speaking on his personal behalf, so he would want to share his knowledge with you and may not be what his employer is doing. He works with Reliance Jio as the business manager for IoT Cloud. He has worked with earlier with NetMagic, and where we had done, me and him, we had done at least 10 to 12 events, field events, where we went length and breadth of country and presented our solutions. Uh, so I used to work for IT distributor, and Gopan used to work with NetMagic, whose product we used to market. With this, over to you, Gopan. And you can introduce yourself. I may not be exactly aware about what I'll do now, and then we can start. You could direct me saying next or something, so I will move the slide accordingly.
Sure,
Thank you very
sure,
much.
Ajit. Thanks a lot, Ajit, for the introduction. And the poll that you conducted ahead of the webinar really helped, because that also gives me a sort of a context that what is the expectation of the audience who are attending this webinar. And I was pretty interesting to see that majority of the people feel that they are not using cloud at work, at all. Almost no cloud at work is the perception that we have. And when we get into the
I think we have lost Gopan. So while Gopan comes back,
is it, yeah,
and
sorry, Ajit, is it
are
there?
you back, Gopan?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Is it audible?
So you are saying that you are happy with the polls, and there we lost somewhere.
Okay, okay. So the thing was, it came out very clearly from polls, is that, it,
We are again losing you, Gopan.
am I audible now?
Hello.
Am I audible, Ajit?
Yeah, your voice is cracking, although you are not. You are not getting out of the webinar, and your voice is cracking. So I don't know whether you have to
Mhm.
come towards somewhere where there is better network.
Mm, okay, let me check. I'm actually on Wi-Fi only. Okay.
Not audible at all.
Yep. Okay. Okay. So let me continue. I think if it again breaks, then I will dial in from the phone itself. So during the poll, I think it was very interesting to see that most of the people feel that they don't use cloud at all at their workplaces, right? And when we look into the growth numbers, which is expected by 2019 and 2020 for the cloud market, and we see the proportion of infrastructure as a service and software as a service as it is available today, and the proportion of infrastructure as a service and software as a service as it is projected in 2019 and 2020. So those numbers are really eye-opening, And the people who said that they are not using cloud in any form at work today uh, will start introspecting and start realizing where all they are using cloud. So as Ajit also mentioned, there could be some of the CRMs that you could be using. CRM could be like a Zoho CRM, it could be a Salesforce. So you are using cloud every day. The most and basic example is that emails that you guys use, right? So it could be a Office 365 at the back end, and for you it is just an email, which is a service, right? So let's get started with the topic for the today. We have split this particular topic into two parts. One is the cloud computing part of it. uh, it is extremely important that we first see, since we have a mix of audience, we thought it will be helpful to first talk about cloud in general as it is understood, so that we all are on the same page, and then we move on to Internet of Things. Yeah, Ajit, next. Can you go to next slide, Ajit? Yeah. Okay. So some of the numbers which I could gather in the recently published Cloud Times. It is a magazine which is published by Mectors Innovations Private Limited, and they largely talk about, they are basically AWS channel partners, and they are one of the topmost channel partners of AWS, and they keep on doing some market research around cloud services, because they of course are the biggest channel partner of AWS. So what they say is that more than 83% of data center traffic will move to cloud by 2020. So if we say that cloud market currently is totally exploited, it is completely wrong. The adoption, the kind of cloud infrastructure as a service adoption, if you look at it in India, it is hardly anything. It could be less than 25 to 30%, and it is expected to hit and go beyond 83%. And the kind of bifurcation that we see at the cloud level, right? There are different types of cloud delivery models which are possible. One is the public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and there could be many more deployment models, which we are going to anyways cover in our subsequent slides. So if you look at the 83% of data center traffic, which is expected to move to cloud, which is infrastructure as a service by 2020, then you see that 56% of the workloads are expected to be on a public cloud model, and 44% workloads are expected to be on private cloud model. Now there could be multiple reasons uh, behind each business opting to choose public cloud over private cloud and vice versa. Those things we'll discuss in the next slide. If you look at the kind of growth in the devices market and the amount of gadgets that everybody carries today, right? So if you earlier, um, uh, a, a person who wants to go onto the internet will only have either a laptop or a desktop. Now everybody sitting on in this webinar has a mobile phone, has a laptop, has probably got a desktop at home, it's got a tablet, and so many devices are there, and every device is generating huge amount of data. A single picture you take on mobile phone is at least 5 to 7 MB, right? So in those kind of cases, that the amount of data that is expected to get generated by the end of 2019 is 500 zettabytes. So you can imagine the opportunity which is lying in the storage market also, which is growing at the exponentially high rate. The market opportunity for various deployment models. Now, these are the figures which I was referring to in my earlier slides. If you look at SaaS today is 45% as compared to infrastructure as a service, which is 42%. Now, if you look at that, SaaS is actually higher than infrastructure as a service. The only reason is that there is a huge adoption of enterprise applications, which could be Office 365 from Microsoft, it could be a Salesforce CRM, which you guys could be using, or it could be some other standardized uh, uh, ERP software from Zoho or from some of the ERP companies like Ramco, right? So you could be using all those applications on everyday basis, but you don't necessarily realize that you are using cloud, because as an end user you are focused on getting the business outcome from the application which you've been given. Now if you look at software as a service in 2020, it clearly is an indicator that hardware is becoming irrelevant. Earlier, if you look at the kind of enterprise application deployments, they will come with a reference architecture that the application works on a particular model of processor, a particular number of sockets have to be there from licensing perspective, from implementation, from performance and security perspective. But those things are expected to fade out completely, because when we talk about cloud in general or Internet of Things in specific, it cannot be hardware agnostic. It cannot be hardware dependent. It has to move completely away from hardware, and it has to focus only on a super piece of software which takes care of all the hardware failures that take at the data center level. If you look at the infrastructure as a service, currently it is 42% though, but it is expected to shrink down to 28%. And whatever drop we can see is almost the hike which you see in the software as a service market, which means that the world and the enterprises are becoming more and more business centric, rather than becoming infrastructure centric. And if you look at the platform as a service adoption, currently it is 13%, and eventually you won't probably see much movement in platform as a service, because when you move to cloud or you move to any sort of hosting, you will choose most of the times you will choose that platform itself, even to develop your application code, right? So these are the numbers which are which gives you an outline of what you can expect in terms of enterprises moving to cloud today and enterprises moving to cloud by 2020. Let's look at some of the major terminology which are being used in cloud, so that when we talk about IoT, it becomes that much relevant for the people who are attending this particular thread for the first time. There are essentially two things that I wanted to bring out very clearly here. One is, we hear a lot of IaaS, XaaS, SaaS, and all of those things, right? So full forms are given over there. But at a broad level, what it means is that when we talk about infrastructure as a service, we are talking about building the application. When you talk about SaaS, you are essentially buying the application without necessarily getting into building or deployment of the application. And when you talk about PaaS, you are only focusing on the deployments. You are not bothered about the buying piece or the building piece, right? So these are the three different major terminology which you should be aware of when we move into something like IoT. And there could be different deployment models depending on the kind of use case that the enterprise has. And when we talk about IoT in our subsequent slides, we'll see that the amount of devices that are expected to be on an IoT platform is humongous. Like the devices could hit in trillions, right? So if you are deploying that kind of an architecture, and some of the dependency if you have on your servers running into your colocation or corporate data center, then you have a challenge to handle, because the way infrastructure provisioning, the user management, and the security works on cloud, there could be a difference between the two, right? So just for the sake of reference, what we are saying is that there could be multiple ways of deploying your cloud infrastructure. It could be a pure play public cloud, or it could be a combination of your existing data center and a public cloud. Next slide. Yeah, Ajit, next slide. Now, when we talk about security, right? So there is a general perception that cloud is not secured, but I wanted to highlight in this slide is that security built into cloud is the actually uh, uh, tool that gives you the ability to scale on the fly in a secured manner. If you look at the first point, when you talk about cloud security, you are talking about deploying security tools at a much granular level in your network. So in a typical cloud deployment, you will have a virtual network which will give you a network level isolation on the cloud service providers network, and inside that you could have multiple sub networks to run your application depending on the kind of roles that the application is supposed to deliver. For example, there could be a multi-tier application which has a web tier, which has got an application tier, and which has got a database tier. Now you want to keep each of these tiers completely segregated even inside within your own network using private IP ranges. In that case, you could have a virtual appliance, which could be a security virtual appliance, sitting dedicatedly inside the web subnetwork. You could have a purpose-built web appliance, security appliance for your application layer, and you can have a similar security appliance for your database layer. In the regular world, if you had to deploy this kind of an architecture, that to in high availability mode from end to end, imagine the kind of cost that you will incur, and imagine that amount of time you will take to deploy that kind of an architecture. But in case of cloud, every security service is available either as a service itself, or it is available in the form of an appliance which can be deployed in the form of a virtual machine. You could have cloud ready policy engines to handle sudden influx of users and devices. Now take the example of companies like Ola and Uber. Millions of customers were already there, and the day they started offering some of the incentives to the customer and all, the amount of adoption that Uber and Ola had in the market has been unprecedented. The rest of the guys have literally shut their stores, right? So if you have that kind of an influx of devices and the users from the market, right, then you need a policy engine itself to onboard each and every user that comes from the public internet. You should be able to provision users as per the kind of access they should have inside your application to do all the functions. And when you talk about the user base, especially IoT talks a lot, revolves a lot around sensors and devices and all of those things, right? So you don't necessarily have a control over the kind of geography you are catering to, right? So in that case, you will have a multiple edge locations for your application. So depending on the proximity of the end customer, you could have a server on cloud sitting nearer to your users in those, and that server could be aggregating the user base of a particular region, right? So in that case, there could be thousands of variables which uh, an edge location always keeps on negotiating with the end devices which are trying to get onto your application on the IoT platform, right? So in that case, even the virtual appliance which is running in the form of a VM at remote locations has to be extremely scalable, has to be extremely uh, highly scalable and highly available. And when we talk about cloud, it is around service oriented architecture, right? So every security appliance that you put will expose some amount of APIs which will be available at the front to the customers and at the back to the application which the customer is trying to use, right? So when you have a service oriented architecture, it becomes highly distributed and highly scalable also. And it definitely with the kind of user load that you will see, you can always keep on augmenting your uh, capacity of the throughput of the API servers which you have. So it is in a way future proof as well. Next one. Now let's look at some of the three things which will change every business, right? So when you want to get into the Internet of Things space, right? There are three ways IoT will change every business. One is the companies will make smarter products, right? Now if you look at the IoT as a product itself, right, it doesn't have a standing on its own, but it has a standing based on the kind of ecosystem that it generates. So if you look at the devices market, right, the kind of smartphones that we had, everybody knows about smartphones, but you have a water heater or a bulb or a tube light or a TV or a fan all connected to the internet. Now in the earlier world, if we see, you won't see a use case to have a digital watch, right? But if you look at the Goki and all the health bands, right? So there's a high proliferation and it has created a new market itself. So the companies who are involved at the hardware or the devices level will have to make smarter products which connect to the internet. Smarter business operations and decisions. When we talk about Internet of Things, it is not about doing a post-mortem of the data collected. It is a real-time analysis which is done on every minute to minute basis, and you take decisions as per what is right, what needs to be done on that minute, right? So if you look at the earlier ecosystem, you would probably look at trends and you will form the line of action that you want to do. But here you need to take the decisions on the fly, right? So that is where analytics also comes into picture. And how do you capture the data generated by millions of devices and then club it with the big data analysis and try to make some business sense out of it. And there is of course change in business model, because the kind of devices that a company needs to offer to its customers, and the kind of use cases that the end customers have for the devices which have been purchased from the company, right? So it is completely a new business model which we are looking into it. Now, in the next few slides, we are going to cover how somebody can venture into the IoT market, right? If what kind of service offering which can be taken. There could be a number of services which can be created on IoT. But when we do that, what kind of platform we should select, given the fact that we have thousands of options, as we discussed in our earlier slide, that you could deploy your IoT platform on a private cloud model, it could be on a hybrid, it could be on a public. So now let's look at some of the things where we really uh, uh, talk about the problem that we have in hand and how do we solve that particular problem. The real problem that we have in hand is that there are millions of households which are available in the world. Every household has got some vehicle, so there are billions of devices and trillions of smaller devices which could be there. It could be a mobile phone, it could be a satellite, it could be a router, right? It could be anything. And there are thousands and millions of office workplaces which are there. So if you look at a life of a regular professional, right? So from the time he starts his day and till the time he ends his day, there are thousands of things which he keeps on interacting with. So when you talk about venturing into an IoT business, all you need is few things and a cloud, right? But it just doesn't end over there. Next one. So when we talk about IoT business, right, as I said earlier, the scalability issues will always be there, because today you might have 10,000 customers, tomorrow you might have 1 crore customers, right? And in that case, every layer in the application delivery channel has to be extremely scalable, and that is why IoT makes as an ideal candidate to go on a public cloud platform only. There are a couple of reasons, and they are related to the way cloud itself works. First and foremost is the rapid scalability. Now, if you, for example, have 1,000 servers running, and if you had to move to 10,000 servers, within an hour's time, then that is never possible in a traditional data center model. You'll need to look at something like cloud, wherein you could set thresholds on the uh, on the capacities that you carry, and you could spin off additional resources as the demand progresses. The cloud itself exposes an API framework, which means that any infrastructure component you will be able to provision using the application itself which you have. So you don't need to invoke special commands manually with some human intervention to augment your capacities on cloud. You can just do it using the APIs which you have, which you get from your cloud service provider. And every infrastructure component in case of cloud is loosely coupled, which means that outage of a particular service in cloud will not have a will not mean outage of other services in cloud. Say for example, in a traditional data center model, if you had one server which had some 10 terabyte of storage, and if the server becomes inaccessible, there is a possibility that you will not be able to access even your data, because your storage is attached as a direct storage to the server itself, right? So you will come out of those kind of issues when we look at an IoT platform hosted on a cloud platform. In the next slide, we are going to talk about a very simple reference architecture which we are suggesting for IoT. So it starts like any other business. It starts with the users on your left hand side, and the users, as we discussed in our earlier slide, they use things. The things could be a home, it could be a car or his office, or it could be some other devices. And these things contain devices and sensors. So which means you could have a sensor for home, you could be doing some surveillance of the home, you could be doing some security of the home. There could be a lot of RFID tags in the shopping malls. So the things on the left have sensors embedded on it, and then in between the two you have your cloud platform which is running the IoT application. The cloud platform integrates with things, and it also integrates with sensors, so that any signal generated by the sensor will be passed on to the thing, and thing will in turn decide which action the user wants to take, and it will give API response to the sensor. So let's look at the call flow. So now we see that the things are integrated with sensors using the cloud platform sitting in between. Now these sensors keep on providing a lot of contextual information. It could be humidity levels in the air, it could be temperature of the room, it could be ambient brightness of the room, it could be fertility of the land. There can be thousands of information points which the device could be generating depending on the type of thing that it's supposed to handle. The contextual information is generated by the devices, and it is fed into the cloud platform using the API framework, and this contextual information is communicated to the things. Things in turn decide what is the action that the user wants to take depending on the kind of API request that was made, and it will trigger the action on the sensor, and sensor anyways in the control of the device, and the action will be performed. So if you look at the entire call flow in this particular architecture, everything works on API itself, API only. When a service wants to do some action, it will request for an API, and the system will in turn give a response uh, to the service. So it always works on request and response parameters. Next one. Yeah. And when we talk about IoT itself, right, deploying on a cloud platform, so there are a couple of things which we should give a serious thought to. One is you need to have a secured mechanism for things and IoT applications to publish and receive messages from each other, right? So what you essentially need is a message broker. You need a entity in your deployment architecture who will transact, who will ensure that a request generated is served in the most efficient manner possible. So that we call it a publish and subscribe mechanism. The rules engine, message processing, and integration process, right? So which rule needs to trigger what action, right? So you might have SQL to select data from message to other services, right? So you could have a SQL simple database running, and that database will have all the rules which govern the functioning of the things and the devices, things and the sensors. The things registry, so essentially which all things are running in your network, right? So you need to know how many cars are running, how many mobile phones are running, and all of those things. So what we essentially call it is a thing registry, which is nothing but a device registry. Device is registered with a thing, and it organizes resources associated with each thing, right? So everything in IoT has some use case to deliver, right? Now the device registry will take care of that particular association, that which device is supposed to do which action, and as per the rules engine, the action will be triggered depending on the kind of payloads and process that the application is running. You need a device gateway because you have thousands and millions and trillions of devices which are expected on the IoT platform, and you need a secured way of communicating across the network, right? Even though things and sensors both integrate onto the cloud itself, you still need a secured gateway in between, because the users come from the public internet, and from public internet, wherever they are sitting, to the edge location, the communication has to be encrypted, and the device gateway at the edge location has to be extremely secured, right? So you need a secure communication, and you need a device gateway. Identity and access management, again very important thing. It needs a very tight integration at the application level and at the end user level. At application level, it should be very clearly identified that who in the IT department can perform what actions on what resources, right? So that is one part of thing from application perspective, from the application backend perspective. From the end user perspective, which action can perform which user can perform which action in the application is something which is customer facing, and every user of the IoT platform and every customer of the IoT platform should be completely segregated based on the user policy. The policy could be allow this particular set of actions to be performed for this particular group of people. Don't allow a particular set of actions if the users belong to this particular group. So that was just to sum up at a very high level what you can start doing at the when you think about starting an IoT product, and what kind of a platform you should choose.
Yeah, so thanks, Gopan. Uh, we are ready to take any questions if any audience has. Uh, Most of the things I have mentioned is in the question answer time I'm seeing is we couldn't hear the presentation. So most of those comments are like that.
Okay.
So if you have any questions, you could ask it now. I can unmute the phone.
Were you able to hear,
Lot of
Ajit? Was
lot
it
of
audible
personal
to
friends
you?
are there. So Anupam Singh is there. Ashish. We have got Mr. Ivan Barros, Komal, Manoj Shah. Yeah, so a lot of friends have attended today's webinar. Mr. Uttam Mane, Chairman of CSI. Anybody has any
Okay.
comment to make, you can raise your hand and I'll unmute your connection, and you could ask a question.
I hope Ajit, at least you could hear. I don't know if people could not hear it, then I really doubt if they will have any
No,
questions
I
also.
don't think it was only in the middle when
Okay.
during the start of your session the
Yeah.
phones were not audible.
Yeah.
And so while people so there are no questions, so people probably are trying to just hear and sort of digest what is happening uh,
Yeah.
in the presentation. Uh, yeah,
So of course this
so
is
I
at a very
am
high level
just trying to unmute
because
one Ashish. Ashish, are you there? Ashish, can you speak? You can ask the question to Gopan. Hello.
Ashish,
Hey, hi Ashish. Can you ask the question?
I think it could be on mute. Ashish, can you check if you're on mute?
So I have unmuted him. I don't know whether he's self-muted. He's not self-muted
Yeah,
also. So
at his device it could be mute.
okay. So I will ask his question. So his
Yep.
question is, what platforms, devices is Reliance Jio using for IoT? So I don't know whether you would want to answer that, Gopan.
Yeah, exactly. So probably this is on a personal capacity, right? So I do not want to take that track actually. Maybe if somebody has a Reliance a specific question, please drop me a note or give me a call separately. We can discuss those things. My official email ID is gopan.joshi@ril.com. RIL stands for Reliance Industries Limited. Gopan.joshi@ril.com. So any geo specific question you can direct it over there, and I'll be more than happy to connect.
Okay. So I am just unmuting Sunil Kumar Jaiswal. He has a couple of questions.
Sure.
I'm just unmuting him. Sunil, you want to ask the questions? Sunil, are you there? So I'm presuming Sunil so doesn't have mic. So I'm just unmuting Sunil. Sunil seems to be doing noise. So Sunil has a couple of questions, Gopan. He's asking to teach IoT, what practicals you can conduct for students. So obviously the most popular practicals are Arduino boards and Raspberry Pi boards, which normally I see
Yeah.
young people teach. Then he has
Yeah.
other question is what fundamental knowledge of IoT is required
Hmm.
for the device to procure. So you want to answer this, Gopan? You can talk about how to teach IoT in a lab or in a class, and
Yeah, I think
if
there are two
because there are a
ways.
lot of
Yeah.
questions coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Sure. Please tell me, Ajit. You were
No,
speaking
so
something.
question is he wants to ask about coaching. That what type of
Okay.
practicals we can, what kind of type of fundamental knowledge we have. I was telling that normally
Hmm.
people conduct. There are two types of training. One is people who teach the boards, which is Arduino and Raspberry Pi, and there are people who
Yeah.
get into the data analytics, how to
Yeah.
take data from IoT and all that. You wanted to answer it, Gopan.
Yeah, so there are basically two things at a broad level, as Ajit said. One is definitely the board, which is the endpoint device from where you capture all the information from the field, right? So one is a training related to that, and there could be multiple board technology which is readily available in the market, and there are experts who can talk about those. And the second piece is the infrastructure side, which where you club infrastructure and application both the things, and you include analytics on top of that. So one thing is definitely boards. The second is the infrastructure piece, where we should focus on uh, uh, provisioning infrastructure required for the IoT application. Now, what kind of infrastructure required to run your IoT application? We need to look at
Yeah, so
a
I've
certain
unmuted.
amount of.
Yeah, so I've unmuted Harshad. Harshad, you wanted to ask a question?
Hey, hi Gopan. Good afternoon, and it
Hi,
was a
Akshat.
very good summary. Yeah, it was a very good summary presentation. I have one quick
Thanks,
question.
Akshat.
So
Yeah.
I would like to know what kind of support is offered by the cloud platforms, especially for the device security.
Okay. Okay. So if you look at, you're talking about public cloud service providers and what kind of support they will extend from their side to ensure security at the device level. Is that correct? So in that case, there could be, if you look at some of the most popular or rather more popular hosting platforms like AWS, they have a service called AWS Cognito, which takes care of authentication and authorization of each and every device that tries to land into your IoT platform. So there could be services exposed by the cloud provider in terms of authorization and authentication. So you'll need to make use of those APIs and integrate with your application so that every device that comes onto your network has a proper authentication and authorization mechanism in place. Does that
That answers
answer your question, Harshit?
yes.
Yes,
So for
Gopan.
the reference, you
That's correct.
could have a look at AWS Cognito. It's a very excellent service, and we could discuss that in more detail, but the paucity of time and the kind of audience we have, so probably we can connect offline.
Sure, that's a good pointer, Gopan. Thanks.
Okay, Harshit.
So I'm just unmuting Vijay Kanduri. Vijay, you're there. Yeah, he's there. Vijay, are you there? Vijay Kanduri? So I believe he's unable to speak. He's self-muted himself. So I'm asking a question on his behalf. Vijay was asking that, can you share some free cloud servers for hosting? And also share some paid cloud servers in India, which are good ones. And then he's asking questions on recording and slides and all that, which I have answered. So we share recordings for everybody who registers and attends, and for slides you can refer to our slide share channel where it will be displayed. So Gopan, you wanted to answer that question of Vijay, where he's saying that what kind of cloud servers we have in India.
So as you know, if you look at Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, they all the three guys are offering some good free servers on cloud. So it depends on kind of use case that you have and the kind of engagement you can get. But anybody in the world can get some in between $200 to $400 kind of a credit, and you can make use of that completely free of cost. And only when you cross $200 and $400, they'll prompt you that you are hitting your usage limit, and we are going to start billing you. So you can look at AWS. They have a Mumbai region which is launched in Mumbai very recently. So for India, you have AWS. You can make use of that. And if you are okay with Singapore or any other place, you can additionally have a look at Microsoft and Google also. So these three guys will give you free of cost. And if you're looking at some domestic offering, then NetMagic definitely is there. And they will not give you free services off the hand like you will get from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. There's some amount of qualification of the opportunity that goes on NetMagic side. So NetMagic is also one of the options you can look at it from India perspective.
Okay, so before we come to our next question, couple of announcements. This Friday we have a digital marketing related webinar, which is on omni channel marketing, where we would discuss what various channels are available to do market. So while you might have a on-premise store, how to leverage on an e-commerce store. And the speaker is again speaking on personal capacity. He works for a large software SI. He has not told me, he has not allowed me to reveal where he works, so I am not doing that. The next Tuesday we have another cloud webinar, which is on Acton Cloud, where the CEO of that company would come and talk about their framework, how they are managing multi clouds, hybrid clouds, and things like that. So hope you have got the invitation. If you have not got, we will share it with you again, and you could attend those webinars as per your interest and choice. Um, and then next Friday, which is 26, me and Milita will talk about inbound marketing and how to use inbound marketing principles in affiliate marketing. So just bit of announcement since we have time. Uh, let me check if we have some questions more. Yeah, so Saidat is there. Saidat, I'll try to unmute you. You can ask your question. Hold on. Yeah, Saidat, you have self-muted yourself. So I've unmuted you. You can check if you can ask your question. So I think I will read his question again. Some of these people are in office and they may not be very comfortable to talk.
Okay.
Gopan, his question, Saidat's question is, what changes are expected in practical business life after 4G and IoT?
So changes, I don't know if I can give a straight answer to that, but it will only be positive because you will get a better speed and better throughput, and probably the amount of time you will take to complete a process, if it takes 10 minutes, you could achieve it in 9 minutes, something like that, because the connectivity on the WAN side will definitely improve. So if you are a distribution company and your sales force or the field staff is carrying some devices, then you might need to upgrade those devices to support 4G, assuming that you're choosing 4G over any other means, right? So if you are adopting 4G, then you will need to have devices which are comfortable with 4G, which are compatible with 4G. And once you have those devices which themselves can emit the speed of 50 Mbps and 100 Mbps, the kind of data center infrastructure that you will have, which you would have chosen to host your application, will also needs to be augmented, because you will have 100 Mbps connection coming in from mobile, but you don't have that much of capacity on the data center side. So that doesn't make a sense, right? So one is the devices itself which are there in the field, and the devices connected to the backend infrastructure. So both the things will undergo upgrade only if you choose to go with the newer models which are available.
His other question was, how will IoT change the business?
So IoT again, right? So as I said in the slide itself, one is the business model itself, right? So if you look at the industry of board systems, which Ajit just spoke about, Raspberry Pi and all of those devices, that market did not exist. Now there are thousands of board manufacturers which are there in the market. Raspberry Pi started with it. Somebody thought, I let me compete with Raspberry Pi. They introduced parallel products, and that gave birth to ancillary industry also, right? So there you need somebody to manufacture boards, and then parts of the board you need somebody to distribute, right? So the kind of new industry itself which has emerged because of emergence of things like IoT, right? So those are the new business model itself which get created, and for the existing businesses, right? Like I said in my previous example, if you have a set of enterprise users running into the field, then you could gather as much information as possible in the earlier world and sit at the end of the month and do some analysis on top of that and have a plan of action for next 1 or 2 months. But when you look at IoT, your devices are straightforward integrating with your IoT platform, and those devices are not dumb devices. They themselves carry a lot of sensor information which is collected from the field. So now you are able to do real-time analytics on top of the information that you are gathering on the fly, right? So the decision making, the call for action from the end user and from your side is definitely going to milliseconds instead of months. Does that clear, Sai?
Hello. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm checking. There doesn't seem to be a lot of answers. I had one comment to make on the LTE technology, where what people are talking about 4G, 4G. The technology is LTE, and it will have a lot of changes. So in stores you could record where the persons are moving. So you can have live store heat maps for retail store management. You could give
Yep.
real-time ads. Uh, so if you have seen the movie Minority Report, there is a freaky show where the people are walking and ads are appearing in the windows. So with LTE, actually, if the regulations allowed, and this will not happen now, it will happen over the next 2 to 5 years. You could give very high-speed interactive ads as the people are moving in a particular locations. Those ads may come on your mobile device, or the window will sense your mobile device and show it to you on its display. So there will be a lot of changes happening because of the LTE technology,
Yep.
which actually nullifies the beacons, very costly. So for understanding where people are moving, where are they, it becomes a very great tool to record. Although regulations are not very clear in terms of recording the movement of people and things like that. So there is lot of privacy debate will happen and things like that. So a lot of changes are happening in 4G, even more than the speed. Speed will be immediately found, but over the next couple of years you will see a lot of changes. So we
Speed
have
is
got
just the medium.
yeah,
Yeah. S- Speed is
tell
just
me,
the
Gopan.
medium. There are thousands of use cases which can be looked at.
Correct, correct. So Saiza says thanks for expert comments to you, Gopan. We have got Roger Thomas. He says thanks for hosting this webinar, and he wants the slides and recordings and all that, which you answered.
Sure.
Uh, uh, what kind of support is available and security is available? You answered. What changes are expected? Yeah. So I think we are more or less through with this webinar. Thanks everybody for attending. As I've told you before, this Friday and the next Friday we have a digital marketing webinar, and coming Tuesday we have a webinar on how to manage intercloud or how to manage hybrid cloud. So when you have multiple clouds, or you have a load which is essentially hosted on your site, but it bursts into cloud, how to manage it. So that all kind of discussions will be happening next Tuesday. As usual, please log in into techxpla.com/events to know more about these events. All these events are free. If anybody of you wants to speak at our events, please write to me separately, and we'll be very happy to host you. And thank you very much for attending. If you have any question, we will wait for another 30 seconds, or we are closing. So thank you very much, Gopan. You had any parting message?
Not really. Only thing is